in order to create a custom connector in PowerApps for the Catalina API for Dynamics SL, first you go into Data, Custom Connectors, and we're going to create a custom connector. We'll give it a name. I'm not going to worry about the icon background color, but let's go ahead and give it a description. So we'll just call it Catalina API for SL connector. We're going to just do HTTP because I don't have HTTPS set up, and I'm going to go to Postman and get some information for it. So I'm just going to go and put in the host name, and I don't need all of that for the host name. So I'll just get rid of the parts that I don't need. Let's just get it formatted a little bit better on the screen. And we'll just do my server name, and then on the base URL, I'm just going to go ahead and put the base. Okay, then we'll go to security. And the Catalina API and the RESTful API uses basic authentication. And these are labels. These aren't the actual username and password. So I'm just going to put in username and password so it's labeled for the user to be able to know. And I'm going to create an action. My first action, I'm going to create get customer. I've already typed it in once so you can see. But anyway, this is going to go ahead and retrieve a customer from SL. I'm just naming it now so it's easier to go and deal with. And now the request is basically what I send to Catalina's API to be able to deal with it. So we've got some header information. So we need to know what the company ID is. And if you've already got our API, you know what site IDs are, which are basically configurations, pointers to configurations. And then let me get the URL. And so the URL is basically where is it? And I'm going to change the actual cust ID to a parameter. So if you use the curly brackets and a name, then you've got a parameter. And you can see right there, cust ID. So that'll allow you to fill in things as it's being executed. You can see I also have the headers, company ID, and site ID. Now also I need to do the response. And this is just what's going to come back. So I'm going to grab what would actually come back. And so this is the big structure that comes back from the API. And this is mainly so that we can know what the variables are beforehand. So PowerApps will know how to go ahead and put fields out on screens and things like that. You can see here, we can configure this to do all kinds of stuff if we wanted to. But I just want to get through a quick sample of how we can go and connect and create a custom connector. And so now it's kind of weird. You have to go ahead and create the connector first. So I'm going to save it before we go to test. And I just want to show how we can test this thing. So as it's saving, there we go. I can see my action for get customer. And let's go to test. Now there's a connection that we have to do. And this is where we actually enter in the username and password. And so I'm going to enter that in. And remember how we labeled it earlier. So you can see how that's labeled. And now I have a connection, which is now a way to be able to connect to our API, and it stores those credentials in PowerApps, so the user doesn't have to know them. Now let's go back and now test what we just did. So we've got an API definition to be able to retrieve customers, and we also have the security set up so that the system knows how we're going to be able to call it with authentication. So you can see I've got my authentication at the top, and now I'm just going to go and try to retrieve C300, which is a cust ID, set in the company ID and site ID, and if you look, there we go. We got data out of SL through Catalina's API. So now I want to go back to definition. I want to add yet another action. I want to be able to update a customer, and this is real important. It's great to be able to retrieve a customer, but I want to be able to update a customer. And so as I fill in these types of things, I've got update customer, and now I'm going to make the request. And we're going to do a patch. Patch means that we're going to only update fields that we want to update. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to get my URL again for my test. I'm going to put the, okay, and then I'm going to get my header. And here we go. and I'm going to get the body. So remember with the original one, I did a get. I didn't have a body for the request. I only had a body from the response. So now I've got all of this data that I can go and capture to send out to be able to update a customer. And I'm going to add the response, because the Catalina API will, once you've done a save, it will send back everything that was saved as it was in SL. Now I'm going to go and test it. Oops, I need to go back and save it first. It's a little quirk with PowerApps. You need to save it. It should just automatically save it, but you know how it goes. But update connector. And as that's updating, now let me go to finally test. And now you can see I've got the update customer one where I can enter in my thing. I accidentally named the parameter C300. I should have named it cust ID, but you know, this is a demo, so now I'm going to put in my appropriate site ID. You can see all the fields that I could fill in. And so depending on what you send, it will only update what you need to do. I'm going to do raw body because this is just JSON or data structure that you can send. And I'm only going to go and update the name. So I'm just putting that in, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there, that's all that's going to get updated in SL. So let me bring up SL. Let me go. Okay, so right now it says Hatteras Boating for the name for C300. So when I go back and I test this thing, I hit test operation, and there we go. We see what came back. And if I go off and back on again, I can see that it updated. So you know, it's really easy to go ahead and do this. So what we'll do in our next demonstration after this, and I'll be putting something out relatively soon, is how do we use this custom connector in an actual Power App, so you can create a mobile app or whatever you want to create using Catalina's API.